Looks like we're live. And I've actually got my picture up in the podcast. You can hear it. Guess last time I didn't put it up there and there went like a minute went by and nobody could hear me. Old age, brother, old age. Anyway, let me get this link put out. You know the drill. So hope everybody's having a good weekend. I can hear myself now. There's a notification. Should get another one. YouTube's good about that, man. They're good about giving out notifications. So if you're not on fieldbillymoonshine.com and the militiamoonshine.com page on YouTube, go to those and subscribe there because they do get the podcasts out, you know, the notifications and stuff. What's going on, Rusty? Anyway, let me get these links shared and we'll get back in here as soon as we can. So what's everybody got cooking or mashed in right now? Also, if you have a moonshine page on Facebook that you enjoy going to and getting your information from and hanging out at other than DIY and militia, let me know so I can share my podcast in there as well. If there's people that'd be interested in it, let me know. All right, let's see if we can get all these. We'll be in good shape if we can get most of these in. Again, Chad, I can't see y'all right now. I'm sharing links, so if you're already commenting or asking questions, I'm not ignoring you. I just I can't have two. Well, I guess I could probably have two things up at once, but it's hard for me to focus on more than one thing at a time. Beauty of getting older, I guess. Getting old. So bear with me just a few more minutes and I'll have these shared. Okay, let's see. A few more here and we'll be done. If they'll let me get them on. If I can share this link in here, I'm not sure if I can or not. Okay, I guess that's about it. Cool. Well, I got most of them shared this time. That's good. All right. Hope everybody had a good time that went up to Philbilly's this weekend for his MASH class. All right. What's going on, Clint? What's up, Will? Hey, Dark. Running watermelon. Boy, I tell you, I'll never do another watermelon. Thank you, Jay Lee. Trying your first batch of Brandy from some wines you made that didn't turn out. Well, that's what I do with my wines that don't turn out well. They generally sometimes make pretty good brandy. You know, it's a lot of times that bad flavor or something went wrong doesn't carry forward at all. It just makes pretty decent brandy. So, but we can talk about that wine. What made it not turn out well? Maybe work on that and getting it done. Blackberry, awesome. Peach brandy, nice, nice. So, what kind of brandy are we talking about? So, the watermelon's tasty, huh? Well, I tell you what, I'm glad yours turned out well, man. Mine. I'll take it back. I did 3 different watermelons. I did the real dark green ones, the seedless dark green ones that are round, and those had some pretty good color. That the wine from that had good color and pretty decent overall smell and flavor. It made a decent wine. Exact same method and everything with the variegated. I mean, like the lime green and then a little bit medium green. You know, kind of like camo pattern, like the regular watermelon looks. You know, the long oblong ones with seeds. I did those, and it's probably it was the worst of the 3, and it didn't have good color. It was just very light pink. Uh, Not a lot of sugar, and the odor from it was the smell wasn't good at all. It was horrible, in fact. And then I did one that was round, and it was still variegated with the lime green and dark green, but it was one of the seedless. So I guess it was kind of a hybrid between the two, I guess. And it was okay. I guess it was kind of in between the two. It was okay. So I ran it as well with it. But the large watermelons, the seeded ones, those didn't produce a decent wine at all. And I did them all 3 exactly the same way. So, you know, there's a difference in the actual watermelons themselves. I would definitely, if the price is the same for the dark green ones, I would definitely try to work with those again. Seemed to be the sweetest starting out. Had the best flavor as a wine, and ended up turning out probably definitely the best of the 3. But yeah, watermelon was it's a pretty tough thing to work with. The flavor, didn't carry over well at all for me. Um, Even with infusions, I wasn't able to get a lot of flavor over. I only had the chance to do it the one time, so you know I didn't get a chance to correct any mistakes I might have made along the way. So Dark's got some banana going. What's up, Curtis? What's going on, John? Good to see you, brother. Banana pineapple. That's awesome. That'll be a good brandy. I also do that like a rum. I don't do the molasses with it, but instead of just regular sugar, I'll use brown sugar. And that seems to get a pretty interesting, flavor. Not too much grunge from the molasses, but an interesting rum. But yeah, banana and pineapple sounds like a really good combo. Awesome. Yeah, like your brother Prohibition. He's a good dude, man. He's a good guy. going on, Scott? Good to see you, brother. Y'all having a good weekend? That'll work. That'd be good. Yeah, that definitely helps some of that flavor carry over. Oh, you tried Big Easy's recipe? Cool, cool. Concord grapes, those are good. Yeah, I don't get much out of watermelon or pear. Somebody's talking about pear last week. You know, pear makes a decent wine. You know, you can get some decent flavors out of what pear wine. Now the watermelon, even the good green one, I guess it would be okay to I guess I could have clarified that and maybe post sweetened it a little bit. It was getting towards the dry side, but it just didn't taste bad. It didn't taste great, but had some good decent watermelon flavor to it. And definitely out of the three, those would have been the one that I would have made the wine with. I don't know that it'd been that great of a wine, but I mean, it would have been okay. But yeah, it's just for what it was worth, the trouble that it took, breaking everything down, getting everything, pulp separated and all that. And that coupled with the results I got, I, watermelon's probably not going to be a thing that I do much of, if ever again. Even as a wine, it wasn't the best. Um, I guess you could spend some time trying to master it and correct some of the mistakes. I tried to correct some of the mistakes before they happened. I knew better than to try to ferment it on the pulp. I know not to use pectic enzymes with it because you're not going to get much more sugar or water out of it. You're just going to start breaking down cellulose and get more heads and methanol in there. So you really don't. It kind of defeat the purpose. But it just and learning those things, and not making that mistake, and just listening to others. That's one of the best ways to learn, unless you're going to do it the hard way every time, is listen to what other people are doing and the results they're having, and try to minimize your mistakes, from not making the same mistakes they did. So I heard early on that a lot of people were having problems with rind, getting a lot of rind, and there's some people use the whole watermelon, just basically ground up rind, watermelon, everything, the whole works, and shoved it in there, and I don't think that's going to give you a good result. Everybody had like a melon tasting, which that's not necessarily bad. Melon tasting's probably okay, but it's not. They wasn't giving them a watermelon. Actually, in two of mine, a melon flavor would have been good. Any kind of flavor other than what they had would have been good. But the one was okay. Dry, not but a lot of banana. Yeah, try some infusions with it. The banana I did, the banana rum I did, came out fairly well. It was it had some banana notes and kind of a dark, grungy kind of flavor that was pretty good, and it paired real well with my um, uh, root beer that I did. So that darkness that came from the banana and the brown sugar kind of gave it a dark grunge that went real well with the root beer. Hello, Matilda. How are you this weekend? Awesome. Peach cider. Sounds good. That's all right. You're not too late. Actually, probably just in time. I just got done sharing the links and just saying hey to everybody and kind of fielding comments as they come. So you're just in time, brother. I think so too. I think brown sugar, vanilla, pineapple. Definitely makes a good light rum. I like it. Oh, let's see. I've got this option. Let me see. Yeah, let's turn that on so some people may be able to see some comments in the. I'll ask them to make it bigger. And so far they haven't, but we're going to hopefully we can see some comments on the bottom right here. Problem is sometimes people on Facebook can't see the YouTuber comments. So I think if we share them here on the screen, if you've got a computer, you might be able to see these. I've asked them to make it bigger, and I don't know. It looks like they managed to make it even smaller than it was. I mean, I wouldn't mind if it took up, a third of the screen, so people could see the comments a little better. But we'll see if they can field my comment at the end of the stream. It asks us, I do love the option to do that, but they need to make it bigger so everybody can see it. What's going on, Jared? Good to see you, brother. Cracked corn, good. Malted wheat, awesome. That sounds like a really good run. Some wheat and corn, that's like me. Throw a little bit of oats in there, man, and it'll soften it up a little bit and make it awesome. New to this, just bought the apartment still from Phil Billy, awesome. Have an apple banana mash working right now. Can I make a rum mash without using molasses and just go with dark brown sugar? Yeah, you can. Now, as far as rum, I don't know if there's a TTB standard that says you have to use certain things. We can research that and look and see. I know, like in vodka, has to reach 190 proof, or like in bourbon, has to be 51% corn. So I don't know if a rum has to have molasses. I do know that a dark brown sugar has molasses in it. That's basically molasses and regular table sugar combined. So I would assume that it would be perfectly fine. I've made a lot of rums that way. I call it rum, and I don't really care about the TTB standards. But yeah, it does make a decent run, and it's a lot of people that just use the molasses, they end up with a lot darker, a grungy kind of um, flavor, and that's just the nature of the molasses itself. So either you like that or you don't, and you can lighten that up a little bit by just using the sugar. Some say it's a little hotter, and got a little more bite to it than like the regular rums and stuff, and that may be the case with using more sugar and less, I guess sugars from the rum itself. But using the right yeast helps a lot too. Using a good rum yeast versus just your everyday yeast can help things along too as well. I think there's certain there's a lot of unfermentable sugars in molasses, and I think some of the rum yeast may actually have an invertase or something in there, a protease or something that will break those down a little better. So those might be a good idea to try as well. Certain rum yeast, and you can research the yeast, just by going to the websites. Well, it got bright in it. Let me shut this. There we go. Where was it? Got my mind sidetracked. But yeah, on the yeast, you could go to like Lauvin's website and look at specific yeast they make that are geared towards making rum, and just do a Google search on rum yeast. And I would say certain things, pretty much you can just use whatever yeast, but for like agave and making tequila, I think using that blue agave, the blue yeast, it's not actually blue yeast, but the blue agave yeast, I think that might be a brand name, blue yeast. Let's check that. But that works really well from what I'm told. I've not done it. Trying to, yeah, Safety Cube Blue tequila yeast. SAF. Tequila Blue. They say that's a really good yeast for tequila. And that's what I've heard most people getting their best results with. And yeah, it's SAF. I guess it's the standard SAF yeast, but it's a TEQ Blue. So I'm assuming just the blue yeast. If you search that, you'll find it. But basically made for rum, and probably does break down some of those molasses dextrins. Yeah, man. Yeah, brown sugar works real well. Distilled tea wine. Tea wine. Oh, like a kombucha. Oh, that'll work. I guess you get pretty much, maybe probably not going to get a lot of tea carryover. It's going to be more of a neutral alcohol, but yeah, you can definitely distill kombucha. We were actually talking to Alfredo one time about doing a bamboo tea kombucha, bambushka. We were going to do, yeah. Yeah, they are. Now that's there's no right answer for this. That's the $1,000,000 question, and only one that individuals can answer. So everybody has a different opinion on that, and some people love a split brandy, basically different fruits going into one. A split brandy using a lot of different fruits is fine. I think a lot of times when you do use a lot of different fruits, you may get confused flavors, that just not, you don't get really one flavor that stands out. So it's not going to be, you can drink it and you can say that's good, but you can't pick a fruit, that you're tasting. It just tastes good, right? And that's okay. But most people, when they're doing brandy, they want you to taste what the brandy's made from. Peach, you can do that pretty easy. There are a lot of apples and others you can do it. Excuse me, fairly easy, but for some fruits, it's pretty tough to get that flavor to carry over. So definitely infusing and things like that are going to help. But you start mixing those with others, it's just, they're going to get lost. So not necessarily a bad thing. It may be a good mixed fruit brandy, could be perfectly fine. And, like I say, doesn't taste specifically like any specific fruit, but have a good flavor. And really, when it boils down to it, if it's something that tastes good and you like it, whether it came through as peach or not, or it didn't carry these notes, if it tastes good, it's an enjoyable thing to drink, then it's kind of a success. If it just because it has that specific fruit flavor, so a little bit of that peach comes through, but it has some really bad off flavors that go along with it. It can taste like that fruit and be successful in that means, but at the same time, really not something that you'd want to drink much of because it just doesn't taste good like my watermelon. So, it's a trade-off. I think mountain brandies basically when you're mixing grain and fruit. And I think a lot of people, can make some pretty decent corn liquor and have that good corn sweetness, and then, follow up with like a peach or a rye, like an apple rye or a peach rye, and have that good fruit with a little spicy from the grain, and those work very well too. So it's just what you like. So there's no right or wrong answer. Some people are going to love some things that you do, and some people are just not going to be for them. So the answer is try it and see what you think about it, and share what you've learned. And some are going to be good, some aren't. Okay. So it wasn't like a fermented tea. It was just basically a tea flavored. I see. So they basically just steeped some tea in a sugar. Oh, sugar shine. I got you. That's one way to do it, isn't it? Hello, Tammy. Hope you're having a good weekend. Yep, I agree, brother. The one that you like best, because we all have different tastes, and I've said it a million times. If we all like the same things, you'd walk into a liquor store, there'd be about 10 or 12 bottles. There'd be one of each different distillate, and that'd be about all we'd need, right? What's going on, Kimbo? What's up, brother? Awesome, awesome. There's been a little conference. People have been talking about the difference in split brandy and mountain brandy. And I always was told a split brandy is different fruits going into one brandy, and a mountain brandy was grain with fruit. So I don't know if there's if there's any correlation to that, if that's right, or some people just split brandy is different fruits, and mountain brandies, it could be, I don't know. That's just the way I've always heard was split fruits was split up between different fruits, and then the mountain brandy was, more of a grain fruit combination. But I don't know. There's I don't know if there's a black legal definition for that or not. Maybe we can look that up and check it. But peaches, rye, and white corn sounds good. Sounds like a good recipe. And that people like mixing that, getting that rye whiskey and getting a little bit of their favorite fruit mixed in with it. And I also think that it also came down to you know economy. I've got some peaches I didn't use in the last run. We've got some corn left over here, and let's just go ahead and combine the two and run them, and see how it turns out. Question. Absolutely. Yeah, you can. That's one of the best. Rack it over. Yeah, definitely take it off the grain and off whatever you're fermenting with, and I do that all the time. I'll put it in a one of those big 5 gallon water bottles, plastic water bottles, those light blue ones. You see them turn upside down for the office things. Those hold 5 gallons, and you can get a stopper on the end of it. It's a number 10 stopper, and yeah, those work real well. And I just rack it off into those and let it settle overnight, and then rack it into the boiler from there. What's going on, Kurt? Good to see you, brother. What's going on, Mike? Welcome to the group. I think things getting sick from methanol really common. If I proof this rum down and I take off what you all say in my 4 shots, is there more of a uh, way to make sure we got off? Mike, generally with methanol, it's kind of like the reefer madness of the day back in the old times when they were trying to scare everybody away from smoking marijuana. Well, it's kind of the same thing with the methanol madness of trying to scare everybody away from making their own moonshine, basically, or drinking moonshine. Back in the day, there was a lot of lead in the distillate. There was a lot of moonshine made in carbon steel drums, oil drums with oil still in it and stuff that was bad. And there are a lot of practice automotive radiators for condensers. A lot of questionable practices and stuff are done in some homemade hooch back in the day. And some of those, probably led to, some sickness, some blindness and issues, there, especially with the metal ions, and the lead and 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 all the questionable things that were done. But with methanol, we found that you would really have to try to concentrate them by rerunning them over and over and over again to really get high enough numbers, or like every time you do a run, you pull the fours off, right, and you just set them to the side, and you pull your fours and heads off, and then you did a run of just fours and heads, right, and then when you did the run of fours and heads, well, that first couple of jars that came off, you save those two again, and kind of concentrate them, and then try to drink something like that. It's a good possibility that you could get some methanol toxicity. I don't know if it's going to be to the point where you go blind and deaf and stuff. I do know that in India and Pakistan and some other countries in the last few years, I've read, some places that have done just that. They get so tight and try to make everything, reuse everything and make everything last so much that they kept redistilling and basically concentrating methanol. And it probably in a brandy too, because there's quite a bit more of them in a brandy than a grain, and considerably more than a sugar shine. So I would say that just keep running those brandy heads and tails, and keep combining them, and just keep running them again and saving the heads and tails and saving them again and again and again. I think eventually you do remove all the ethanol, most of the ethanol from it, and what you're left with is probably fusel oils and methanol, in which case you're going to get, if not a really really bad hangover, which should be your first sign that you probably shouldn't have too much more of it. But yeah, it's you can concentrate them that way, and it can become a problem. But like if you're just doing it all grain, and you're just saving your tails, and you're not saving, the high heads and fours, which basically high heads and fours is the very first that comes off. Let me pull up this chart and show you. And I don't understand a lot of people's reasoning in saving. Shoot, let's see. Yeah, here we go. Like in this chart, like jar number 1 and 2 and 3, that light blue, there's just not enough light blue in jars 1, 2, and 3 to even fool with, So, somebody was asking me earlier, and that's the question everybody asks is, when you do stripping runs, do you just strip everything off, and then do you pull fours and heads, or do you just strip them? And that's one of the questions I get asked a lot, and probably most. And no, I when I do a stripping run, I'm going to take jars 1, 2, and probably 3 off, and they don't go back into a all faints nothing, because there's just not enough ethanol there for me to try to recover. There may be some good esters. People argue back and forth. Oh, there's some good esters and some sweet. I don't want acetone. I don't consider that a good ester, and I'm not, ethyl acetate. I just don't want it in my mix. Now some of the heads in jar 4, 5, and 6, you may get some interesting esters out of, and you probably possibly can, especially 6 and 7, which some people might consider, keeping if you're going to age or something, and you want some of the acids and the oils in your tails, and some of the, net organic acids, and to esterify with the oil and create some good phenols and polyphenols and flavonoids and some interesting flavors. But jars 1, 2, and 3, I'm pitching it because there's just not enough light blue to run all that, and to add those fours and all that ethyl acetate and acetone back into it and try to remove it again. So even if I strip, I'm pulling those, and they don't go back into nothing. No tails, I'll keep tails, but and jars 6 and 7, I'll put that in with some tails and rerun it. There's a lot of recoverable alcohol from that. And if it's something I'm aging on oak, jar 7 for sure may very well go in it with it, as well as jar 15 and 16. And it's just, once you mix jars, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 14, 15, and 16, there's just not enough tails and heads in there to ruin it, but there is enough to give you some esterification that will work well over time for aging. Now, if you're not going to age, you probably don't want those. You need to learn what you're making cuts for. So if you're making cuts for something that you're going to drink this weekend or next week or, soon thereafter, then, you're going to have to make tighter cuts to get rid of some of these off flavors. But some of these off flavors become flavorful over time. I've had people, well, we were talking last week, somebody was talking about some shine that they made from um, what was that? Squash. Somebody made some squash shine and was talking to me about it. And somebody commented, that doesn't sound good. Well, he's like, well, it was. I didn't expect it to either, but it came out pretty well. And it tasted pretty good. And I gave some to a friend, and they don't drink a lot. They let it sit on the shelf for 6 months, and they cracked it back out and brought it to me, and they're like, wow, this tastes this good when you gave it to me. And they're like, no, it didn't taste anything like that. It's just, it matured into something really good. And it's just like, wines mature, so do alcohols, and they can mature in the jar. It doesn't have to be on oak. So the aging process is not just getting oak and tannins into it and getting that barrel in it. The aging process is also allowing, the process of esterification and a lot of the chemical processes that are going on, allowing those to happen. So, but getting back to your question, I think if you make proper cuts, you're definitely going to cut, the methanol out in the 4 shots. That should be a primary concern for everybody, and I'm glad and I appreciate that you are concerned about that, because I think too many people just like, willy nilly, I don't care, and they should care more. But this is your health and something that you're putting in your body, so you definitely should be concerned and should question. And 50 milliliters per gallon will definitely get you in the ballpark of getting most of your, most of the methanol and your heads and stuff out. We have found though that you'll find it throughout the run. Now on this graph here, you see where the red is, that's your methanol. There should have been, like in jar 2, there should have been 4 shots. There should have been red in every jar all the way across there, in lessening and lessening and lessening amounts as it goes across, where jar 20 might just have a few red dots in it, right? So, because we know that methanol carries throughout the run, but in less and less and less quantities as you go. And that's because it's azeotropic and it's bonded with the water and the other alcohols that are in there. And true fractionalization doesn't take place in the pot stills that we use. So we don't fractionally distill. Hope that answers your question, and good question, and something that definitely. But the 50 milliliters definitely per gallon that you have mash, it'll definitely get rid of most of the things that you need to worry about. Making proper cuts though, and being able to break, go from that heads to the hearts and making the proper transition there. You'll get that, and you'll learn it, but. Not so much to worry about. This is going to taste horrible. Jars 1, 2, and 3 are going to taste horrible. It's not going to be something you want to drink. And the second you taste it, it's something bad. And you're not going to swallow it. You're not going to save it. So, pretty low. Especially if you follow the rules and just pitch that first couple of jars, you'll be fine. Uh-oh. All right, brother. Have a good night. Working at night, man. Saturday night. Damn. I hate that for you, brother. Have a good man. We'll see you Wednesday. That's interesting. So what would it be if you would only use sweet corn or barley any? I'm not following you. You're still going to get methanol, just not as much as like a brandy was going to give you. Yeah, yeah. And technically you could do a normal run and just not even pitch any and mix it all up and have a really crummy tasting liquor that's gonna give you a hangover, a really bad hangover, and that's going to be about the amount of your sickness. You almost have to concentrate the flavors to get them to the point where it's going to be toxic. I mean, well, I shouldn't say that. Alcohol's toxic. Okay, so let's just people say, "Oh, it makes it toxic." Alcohol alone is toxic. That's why we get drunk when we're drinking. But yeah, it's you'll know when you have it. A lot of headaches and flavor will be bad. It tastes acetone, and it's just learn to make cuts and just don't get greedy. It's just not worth it. And that's probably another thing over in the past too that was done that probably caused sickness is just greed. People running it over and over and over again, concentrating it and not making proper cuts and just not really caring about the client or the customer and just caring about the bottom dollar. I'd say that's probably your big city bootleggers that did that, your big city moonshiners that sold thousands of people, had lots of sales and lots of people that they sold to. They really cared less. Your moonshiner up the hollow and he was more or less just a community distiller, and they cared more about their consumers than probably a big city shiner. Pretty much along the same lines, I guess, as anything else. It's like your drug dealers. They don't care in the cities. They'll give you that fentanyl and your stuff and watch you die, and they don't care next. Whereas, in smaller towns, you do that and you get strung up. Awesome. Yeah, I make some pretty high proof wine myself. We got one called Sweet Heat. It's uh, kept the sweetness and some of the sweetness in it, but it's like 16%, yeah, 17%. It's all the yeast will do. Yeah, I mean, yeah, wine, is just like the brandy. It's a lot of people seem to think that all these chemicals, all this methanol, ethyl acetate, acetaldehyde, acetone, they seem to act like those are created during distillation. Those are in the wine and the beer that you're drinking, all the way down to the tails, all of it. So when you're drinking wine, you're drinking bottles 1 through 20 that have not been separated. So you're getting some methanol in there, and you're getting a lot of the ethyl acetates, aldehydes, acetone. It's all in there, all the way across. Now, distilling it can concentrate it, and does. That's why we distill, so we can concentrate the alcohol and eliminate some of the other things that are in there. But So yeah, that's why a lot of people, when you get real drunk on wine, why you have bad hangovers. You're drinking heads, and lots of heads, and lots of tails too. No, we're here for basic questions, brother. That's why we're here. We're here to make it safe and to answer questions. So there is no stupid question in this podcast, my friend. Ask any question. It can be asked and answered 1,000 times, and I'll probably answer it 1,000 more times, because everybody has the same basic questions, and they should, as far as concerns about health and safety, and those are never bad questions. What's going on, Steve? What's up, brother? Yeah, it's definitely better to ask and learn than to try to find out the hard way. You don't want to find out the hard way. Can you make tinctures out of heads? Excellent question. If I guess there's a lot of tinctures that, acetones, you can pull out some acetones in your heads, and I'm sure that there's some tinctures that would require maybe an acetone to help break down, and I guess I don't know if I would say there's a good possibility that certain tinctures might require an acetone, and I'm not sure if it would necessarily be something that you would consume, or maybe you allow the acetone to evaporate off and you get what's just, the substance that's left, oils or whatever that are left afterwards. So I'm not really that down on all the different tinctures and what all might be used, because I do know that in a lot of tinctures that use alcohol, you allow the alcohol to evaporate off and you're left with, like an oil residue or something like that. And that's the medicine, right? So some will keep the alcohol and keep it, in fluid and liquid. And some of them allow the alcohol to evaporate off, and you just use what's left. Some might even actually, you might like burn off the alcohol. I'm sure there's a lot of different tinctures made a lot of different ways. Um, so I'm not sure, Jared. Good question. I would have to say it would really just depend on the type tincture, because there might very well be some that would use, that would need more of a, you know, acetone type thing to break it down, right? Because not everything that's dissolved by alcohol can be dissolved by acetone, and vice versa. So, um, basically, the higher end of the stuff is almost a paint thinner, so. Uh, don't know. I'm sure there's lots of different tinctures that are made in different ways. I'm not real big on those. I'm trying to learn more about tinctures. Um, so that's an excellent question. On this chart, basically, you can't take this chart to heart. This basically, I use it just to help break down to how much is in each, and how it gets less and less and less, and then you get to your hearts, and then you start building tails. um, and the temperatures at the top, forget those. But every mash won't come out this way. Some will have more dark blue, and some will have more of the green, and some, will have hardly any of the dark blue and hardly any of the green, and more of the light blue, depending on what it is, and how you're running it. So if you've got a column and you're running a deflegmator, you may compress heads, and get them pretty much all at once, and compress your tails, and increase your hearts that way, by compressing the heads and tails into, tighter cuts. So it really depends. So the basic rule of thumb, Mike, is 50 milliliters per gallon. So 350 milliliters. If you pull off 350 milliliters out of what you got, that should get you pretty much in the ballpark. But it's not a set in stone thing. Depending on what you're running, brandy's going to have more sugar washes left, grains less. So you're going to learn to make cuts. You cannot just go by amounts to make proper cuts. That's the thing that a lot of people want to stress. It will help you get in the ballpark. So you'll know, okay, I'm getting close to 350. According to them, I should be pretty much, out of my heads now and getting pretty close to my heart. So you can start smelling and tasting and all that jazz, or just marking your jars 1, 2, 3, and each jar, some of these, mason jars will have amounts on the side, I mean milliliters and stuff. So if you just your first jar, if you just want to do a quart and run it up to 350, set it off to the side, and then, or you could do it to 300 and then do a little jar for 50 and then do another little jar for 50, another little jar. And that way you can make a finer cut right when you know it's about to transition from heads to hearts. And that way you can make a little better cut there, by having less and less. Because if you just do like a quart, one of these quarts is going to have, heads and hearts in it, to where you could have just cut half of that out and divided it into 2 jars, and one of those jars would have been a keeper, right? So, having smaller collection jars until you get better is also a good way to do it. So you don't have to have 20. There could be 40, smaller jars, or, if you don't have that much of a run, these could be, shot glasses, on a small steel. These could be just pretty much a teeny tiny jar, eighth of a pint or, quarter pint. So just learning to do your cuts and to go backwards also, when you've got all these jars, label them, number them, and pretty much after 350 I should be pretty much out of them. So let's go over here to a jar that says, that's 750 milliliters in, right? So I know for sure that I'm out of them by then. So you can start tasting those and think, this is definitely my hearts, right? So I'm going to go backwards until I start tasting some acetone and start getting some bad flavors. Because if you taste jar 1, 2, or 3 in this chart, man, it's so hard to get that flavor off your tongue. But by the time you're drinking jar 7, 8, 9, it still tastes like it, because it's just on your tongue, and everything you drink after that's going to taste like it. So if you start at jar 12 and start drinking your way back to 11s taste good, 10 tastes good, 9 tastes good, 8 tastes good, 7, I don't know. There's something in there. Kind of iffy. 8, yeah, I'm definitely picking up a lot more. It's not real bad. 5, yeah, wait, that's just getting too much. So, you'll know in between those small cuts and where you can make that cut. And also, the longer, if you're going to put it in a barrel, it's okay to keep that jar 6 and 7 and 15, 16, because it's going to, or maybe just 7 and 15, depending on what you got and how long, it's just experiment. That's how people do. But a lot of people believe that distillers just take like jar 8 through 14 or 9 through 13 and just don't fool with any of that other stuff at all. Just throw it all away. No, they don't. Trust me, they don't. Yeah, your hydrometer will also, especially when you get to heart or to your tails. It's real easy to tell, when your proof is 160, 160, 155, 150, 150, and then 145, 130, 110. When it drops, makes that big drop, and then the next one comes out 90. You're getting pretty close to your tails when you get really sudden drops like that. So it'll be fairly constant, and then all of a sudden, you'll get a pretty sudden drop, and that's when you're, start making some closer looks and some get ready to make some cuts there. But run it on down. Run your tails on out and redistill those, because it's easy to get the green out of 15 through 20, because that green, it's tailsy. It's kind of got that wet cardboard, moist, danky odor and flavor, but that's real easy to distill out. Very easy. So you save those tails and redistill them. You can get some really clean alcohol out of it, like 10 through 13 of these jars up here. Now, if you redistill jars 1, 2, and 3 and keep redistilling them, you're still going to be redistilling ethyl acetate, acetaldehyde, and acetone, and it's going to be difficult to cut that little bit of baby blue out of those. It's just going to be tough, and I just don't understand why people do it. But maybe it's a cost thing. Maybe they found a way to separate the esters and to get better flavors out of some of that. Something I've really never fooled a lot with. But it's not 50 milliliters per jar, 50 milliliters per gallon of mash. So if you have a 10-gallon mash, you need to pull about 500 milliliters, and that should get you close to the ballpark. But don't just go by that. You need to start learning to do cuts and do it by flavor. But it's just a ballpark to get you, in the area that this is where I need to focus, and from 400 to 600, I'll taste these in smaller jars and learn to make cuts by doing that. But yeah, it's just a general rule of thumb, and it'll keep you safe. It'll keep, if health and safety is a concern, then yeah, you could probably just do that. If you're really wanting to learn how to, get the flavors that you want, you're going to have to learn to make the cuts and eliminate some of these off tastes and hangovers. Cool. A lot of these charts, if you want to join the Moonshine Militia or DIY Shine and stuff on Facebook, most all these charts and all this information is in the file section. So there you go. Damn, you guys are good. Y'all beat me to this shit. I'm just now seeing this. All right, I'm getting behind. Yeah, yeah. If it smells like something your wife uses to take the fingernail polish off, or something you use to clean PVC before you glue it, probably not going to be something you want to drink. Yeah, those wine hangovers are bad. I'm getting behind. Cool, cool. I talked to Damon, brother. I have no idea about any of that. Everybody's so busy. Hell, I don't even get a chance to talk to him much, man. Everybody's got so much going on these days, but I need to talk to him. Yeah, I mean, some people distill just to get that acetone out, and use that. It's a useful byproduct. They use it for fingernail polish remover. It works as a paint remover. It works for a lot of different things. And I'm sure that there's a process out there that'll separate it. I think there's some acid that you can mix and use to help separate, and that not something that you want to drink, but as far as separating it to utilize it for other commercial purposes, yeah, I'm sure they do a lot of that for sure. Awesome. Yeah, and a lot of times, I know, like in the marijuana industry, in the cannabis industry, I should say, I guess they call it cannabis. Um, you really, when you're making, dissolving, I've seen there's a lot of extraction methods to extract the oils and THCs and alcohol solubles out of the bud. And they found that, a lot of the psychoactive materials that we, makes good medicine that we enjoy are easily extracted with alcohol, and what they're not soluble in water. So water, you can't get it at all. But yeah, if you use like 190 proof plus, and the higher proof the better, you'll get a good nice amber color of the oil extractions, and you won't get a lot of green chlorophyll, looking extract. If you have water in it, it's going to turn green, and it just doesn't look as good. It's not as aesthetic. I'm not sure how much impact it makes on the actual flavor. I'm sure it has to impact it some. It might make it taste grassier and and impact the flavor of it. But yeah, I do know that having a ultra high proof and low water content is important for a lot of extracting. I'm not sure if it's just aesthetic, but I'm sure having that water in there is causing it to be green and may reduce the efficacy of the medicine. So acetone is good for removing flavors and smells. Yeah, I can see how that would work. Uh, yeah, I think I just keep the skunk in my bud and have less acetone flavor. I'll have that skunky extract before I want to. But I guess if it's evaporated, you're not really going to get the acetone, effect from it. So, and I'm sure that it'll probably extract maybe different things than alcohol would. Again, if you look on the charts, um, ethanol and ethyl acetate have different they're solvents for different things. Some things that alcohol work on that ethyl acetate won't, and vice versa. I know that a lot of people say, "Oh, that's safe. That plastic is perfectly safe for that alcohol. It'll be just fine. You can store it in that plastic. It's not a problem." Well, yeah, if it's ethanol, but how much percentage of ethyl acetates are in that? And look on that same chart for how ethyl acetates affect that same plastic. Hmm, big difference now, huh? It's not getting that A rating. All of a sudden it's C or B or C, meaning that there's some extraction going on. It's a solvent, so it's eating some of that plastic away. Which is, some people say, "Oh, that plastic's perfectly safe for ethanol." Yeah, if it's pure ethanol, it sure will. But a lot of what we have, most of all what we have ethyl acetates and other compounds that will break down some of those plastics. So I'm not a real big plastic and alcohol combo kind of guy. I think, as far as mashing and winemaking and low concentrations, I don't think it's an issue. But as far as storing, 190 proof that probably have ethyl acetates and everything else in it, I don't think it's a good idea. You know, Especially the more they're finding out about microplastics and things like that. With if it were pure ethanol, then yeah, but with a lot of the other compounds that are combined and that are in there, no. Now, if this were something that was made on, commercially and fractionally distilled and separated, and you had 100% ethanol, and then yeah, you can put that in pretty much most of your plastics and not have a worry. What's going on, Bud Grip? Tails, is it worth it? I think so. I definitely think it's worth it if you have the time and money. If you're using propane, there's a certain point when it's going to be no, it's probably not going to be worth it to continue to try to extract that alcohol based on the amount of fuel that it's going to take to do it, right? If you're on electric, it's running a hell of a lot cheaper. So, it's going to raise your water bill. That can of gas is $20. You can get the same equivalent, using your home circuit. Now, I know electricity rates vary, but, it's a couple few bucks in comparison. So, yeah, it's a big difference in transitioning from how much it costs to run on propane versus electric, which is one of the beauties of electric. It can cut your costs so much, and it eliminates that, oh my God, I'm out of propane. I got to run to the store. I'm in the middle of the run, kind of issues. Or I'm just now gelatinizing my corn and boiling water, and now I can't even, can't even boil my water anymore. And I've got half this corn gelatinized, and now, you know, it's a constant issue, and you always have to, if you're thinking ahead, you've got two or three different, propane canisters, and you always stay one or two ahead. Always have an extra one or two planned. And that way you never run out. But it's easy to run out. So, and costs have to be a concern. And time. There's times that I'm like, fuck it, I'm not running. Like with that watermelon. It wasn't coming out real good. It wasn't real good flavor. I know pretty much that every bit of that's going to go right back into a still and go into some plates and get neutralized and get a lot of that flavor, the bad flavor out, neutralize it, and it'll probably make a decent vodka that I'll mix with something else. Um, yep, yeah, different. And combining the two can make some pretty interesting things. So rice and oats. Sounds good, brother. What kind of yeast did you use? And did you cook that rice down and add the amylase and everything? Yeah, I'd say we've all done that a time or two. I've seen a lot of these guys, they'll just taste it and spit it out because they don't want to get hammered. But welcome back. Yeah, what's going on, Mr. Shadow? Yeah, I try to do the same, Chris. I'll start in the middle, and it's easy to figure out tails. I don't even really hardly have to taste and fool with those anymore. I know where they are, just the way they come off and proof off, and I might taste a little bit of it, just to make sure. But that head's heart cut usually is the toughest, and that definitely I work my way backwards. Definitely the way to do it. Yeah. So if you have if you got 10 gallons of liquid that you're putting in a 15-gallon still, then 50, 10 gallons times the 50 milliliters. And that's just, again, that's just a rough, that's nothing set in stone. That's just a rough figure to just to help indicate when you might want to start checking. And if you have no other method of testing and you don't know how to do cuts, if you just want to, have something that's, going to be okay and not give you too bad a hangover, or if you're concerned about methanol, that should, ease up a lot of your concerns. The worst thing that's going to happen is a hangover. Yeah, so if you have 10 milligrams, or I'm sorry, 10 gallons, then 500 milliliters, should be fine. Most of your ball jars will have a cups. I wonder how much cups that is. I think 300. Yeah, 300 is a little more than a cup. Maybe 250 is 250 milliliters is 1 US cup. So if you've got 5 gallons, 1 cup. So if you've got 10 gallons, roughly 2 cups. So I know most of your jars will have cups, if not milliliters. So 2 cups is 500 milliliters, basically 1.1, but close enough. Yes, sir. We need to, that's kind of a fun thing we've done in the past is make a thread, in the group and discussion on the pages. What all we've discovered that foreshots and heads are good for, and cleaning, and they make an excellent disinfectant and cleaner. They're great for glass. I always try to get some blue food dye and drop some in there, make it kind of blue and look like Windex, so we don't drink it. But I use it to clean my glasses. I have some next to me here. I'll keep a little bottle, and it's usually marked. This one's not, well, the markings come off, but it's no contact solution bottle. What the hell is it? But it's no contact solution bottle, and I'll pour heads in this, and anytime I need to clean my glasses, I'll just get me a handkerchief or a Kleenex, just drop a few drops of this on there, and man, it'll clean your eyeglasses really well. But it's good for cleaning countertops. It'll strip a lot of the oils and stuff off your countertops, cleaning glass top ovens, cleaning a lot of things. It cuts grease really well. It's great for fire starters to start your grills with. Again, with grass killers, it's great for if you do welding, to prep your metal with, to clean oils and clean stuff off. It's like acetone, whatever you use acetone. It's great for fingernail polish. So put a little perfume in it, give some to your wife for her fingernails. She'll love it. So kill wasps. I found out that it will too. I actually upstairs I had this. It looked like a murder hornet, man. I swear to some bitch is that big, and it was in my damn house. So, and I was I was running a little shine at the time, and I was pretty drunk, and this son of a bitch is crawling around my kitchen. I'm like, God damn, man, that's a fucking murder wasp. That's some murder hornet, and it was a big ass hornet, man. And so I know what was it I did. What was that? Oh, I know what was. I had some canned air, that you spray keyboards and stuff with. And if you get the liquid to come out, it's like ice cold. So I was turning this thing upside, to get the liquid out. And I sprayed that liquid on that damn wasp, and man, it froze that some bitch solid right there, alive. And I caught it in a jar and put it in a jar heads. That's what windshield, yeah, and it's good to remove those. If you live down in Florida or in the South, those love bugs. I don't know if those are still a problem or not, but they used to be, pretty bad about having acid content. And they'd get all over your front of your car and start eating into your paint. Yeah, they clean injectors, parts cleaner. Yep, that's right. You can use it if you do some welding. You can clean your metal parts with that before you do your welds, grinds. Yeah, I'm going to learn more about making tinctures and stuff. I've got some books on medicinal plants and herbs and stuff, and definitely something that we're going to hopefully not have to get back into using, but you never know. You know, if the shit hits the fan, it's always best to be prepared, and having some books and some instructional guides and holistic medicine would be a good thing to learn, because it's a lot better to learn at your leisure now while everything's relaxed than, you know, if the shit hits the fan and you need medicine and you might not have time to learn. You need to be, you know, able to make it and go. So these days you never know. Yeah, I agree. I like keeping everything in glass. Now my wines and my mashes, I'm not as concerned when it's low proof. Um, I don't really worry about it. But anything post distillation for me, I like to keep it on glass. You know, I know a lot of people put them in these pouches, and if you're putting in a pouch to mail, and it's just going to be in the pouch for a day or a few, that's not so bad. But if, you know, if 6, 8 months, you know, a year sitting in that bag, nah, I ain't drinking that shit. And not after it's sat in a plastic bag that's really made in China, and we really don't know how resistant that is to all that's in the alcohol. Nah, life's too life's too short to waste it on something like that. I'm not gonna, you know, I'm not that hard up for alcohol. Watermelon pineapple. Well, I say that, you know, as far as watermelon's concerned, I've turned out some good pineapple. But watermelon, I think when it comes to watermelon, I think post flavoring is the way to go. And I think we need to try to get away from anti post flavoring just for the sake of bragging rights, and I carried this flavor forward, and, you know, kind of thing. It's just a waste. You know, there's so much waste. I can make a neutral for so cheap and add some watermelon flavors and make some of the best watermelon alcohol that you could ever drink. Now, it might not be watermelon coming off the tap, which is really tough to do. Um, but what are we really looking for in the end? Are we looking for something that we can put in a bottle that others will enjoy and like and repeat and want more of? Or are we doing all this for bragging rights about how much flavor I can pull forward in a distillation? Because it's great to pull that flavor forward, and it is an achievement. But you put that achievement in a bottle, and people are just still not going to want it, because it's like, I'm getting a little bit of watermelon, but I thought this was watermelon. I mean, I'm expecting some smack me down in the face Jolly Rancher, you know, watermelon flavor, and this, I'm not getting it from this. So I think, you know, and I'm probably as guilty or more guilty than anybody, because I used to be one of those purists, and I still don't do a lot of the syrupy flavored drinks because it's hard set in my ways, but I do know that it's a fault that I need to change, because it's not just about the bragging rights and what I pulled through and the brandy that I made. It's what do people want, you know? And the more and more that I go to a lot of these festivals and go to bars and see what people are drinking, they're not drinking white dog. They're not drinking moonshine. You know, they're drinking flavored drinks now, whether it be you know, a Sprite or a cherry drink or a rum and coke or a, you know, some kind of cherry syrup or watermelon syrup, or, you know, some kind of flavored blackberry syrup or something like that, flavored drink that actually has some good flavors. You know, I'm going to go with that over a brandy because it just tastes good. But I will say, I would say probably 90% of all the sweetened drinks that I've drank at the festivals, and I'm not going to mention any names, it's, you know, I would say the majority of it. So if I've tried yours, chances are I probably thought of this the same. I think most of them are way too sweet and way too syrupy. And you're not getting any alcohol at all. They say, oh, it's like 40 proof, and you're not getting any alcohol at all, and it's just really, really, really sweet, thick, syrupy. You know, and that's just, for me, I don't know, maybe it's when I'm getting older and my taste buds and my tastes have changed, my palate's matured or something. I don't know, but for me, it's just I feel like I'm just turning up a bottle of Aunt Jemima, or I'm just like eating jelly. It's like, it's just too sweet. It's just too much. So I think balancing, alcohol and getting a decent enough proof in there to where I can taste. I think that's why a lot of people like um, my root beer shines so well, is because it's 100 proof and it's not real sweet. You get root beer and you get a lot of alcohol. You get 100 proof root beer, right? And I think that's why a lot of people like that, is because it's not just real sweet root beer with a little bit of alcohol. This is a root beer alcohol, basically, that you could use to mix if you wanted to mix with. This is 100 proof alcohol, that you could add a little Sprite to and get a little, you know, weaken it down if you wanted to a little bit. But when you drink it, you know what you're drinking. So I think with the watermelon, especially, a Post is it's just the way to do it. If you want a good watermelon flavor, there's nothing wrong with getting some watermelon extract or some of this snow cone syrup. Mix that with a little vodka. Make a good watermelony drink. Maybe add some other, a little pineapple to it. Or yeah, sounds like a good combo. But I think we're going to have to start doing a little more Post and infusing is fun, and trying to get these flavors to carry forward is fun, and it's great for competitive distilling. But in the end, I think that people's expectations and what they're actually expecting and what they're getting are a lot different. I think that most people, when they come and they try these, and they're, oh, this is that watermelon crawl everybody's talking about. All right. And they taste it, like, not really that good. And I'm getting a little bit of watermelon from that, and that's about it. And I'm getting a little bit of sweetness, a little bit of watermelon, but it's not real strong, and it doesn't carry unless you infuse the shit out of it. I wasn't even able to get much on my infusion. I only ran it once, and then I probably should have kept retorting and concentrating, but I just didn't have the time and really the inclination. I wasn't real happy with the wine and way it started. So usually with distilling, garbage in, garbage out. A lot of time brandies, you can fix some wines though. As far as I shouldn't say garbage, some wines that just don't taste that great as a wine could be distilled into a fine brandy, get the alcohol out of it, and Post flavor a little bit or infuse, and you'll be fine. But that watermelon really didn't start out smelling or all that great, or tasting all that great. So it really didn't have a whole lot, very far to go. It's hard to improve. Yeah, definitely store in your jars, for sure. And y'all have still pet familiar. Yeah. Do you name your steels? Hell yeah. Yeah, you rerun your tails. Don't want to continuously, like if it's a brandy tail, redo it once, and then the the results of that. Don't keep saving tails and rerunning tails and running, because eventually, you're going to get the alcohol out, and this all that's left is going to be a lot of oils, and it's just not good. So yeah, I'll save all my tails once and do a tails run, or I just mix it with the next run, and I just keep constant doing that. And I don't think that concentrates it that way, because it's usually just a couple of jars of tails going into a 15-gallon mash, and I don't think it really carries that over and over and over again where it's going to concentrate anything. So something like that's okay. Brandies, probably not as good, but with your grains, yeah, you can carry those tails over, and you're not gonna have as much to worry about for sure. 2-gallon glass jar. That's awesome. And you can store it in stainless steel. Stainless steel is perfectly neutral, good clean stainless. You can store it in that. Copper, I'm sure it would probably be okay to store it in copper as well. Might cause some of your copper to acid and get green. I don't know. Might not be the best place to store it, but yeah, stainless steel is perfectly good vessel and glass for sure. What's going on, Scott? Not much, brother. It's taking it easy. Yeah, be 400 milliliters. And that's not just fours. That's fours and head kind of, combined. But yeah, there's no way that there's that much methanol in eight gallons of shine. Period. So yeah, you're getting some heads with that. A lot of your heads too. Found out that your landlord comes from a shiner family. Even told me about his grandma and mom getting raided. Wow, cool. What do you think about your stuff? It's a cool landlord. Yeah, printing. Definitely thin your inks out with it and clean up. Definitely good for cleaning. Hell yeah. Yeah, you never know where those shiners might be. I, you'd be surprised at the number of people that are in the community. Everybody thinks, oh, it's just a bunch of hillbillies. Shit, we got doctors, attorneys. I'm sure some politicians and some, people from all walks of life enjoy the hobby. So it's it's not just for hillbillies anymore, I guess. Cool. So you mixing it with citronella for your torches. That's cool. Good idea. Yeah, I think we all need to practice that a little bit more. And it's hard for me, Lord. It's hard for me not to get political when we start talking about things like this, but we can't do it because I can't stay focused. Don't get me started. Absolutely. Yeah. I have no idea what an ID10T is, but I don't know, man. Yeah, like old Lisa. She's our resident ditch witch. She knows all about that. She's getting more and more knowledgeable. She knows a lot about plants and holistic medicine, and we're trying to learn more. And I think I'd like to. I think Lisa and Mark kind of do a holistic podcast, but it's a lot of things end up just discussions like us. We start out talking about distilling, and the next thing you know, we're talking about politics and bug sprays and everything else. But we really do need to get, a little bit more education as far as canning and preserving foods and putting foods up properly, and measuring acid content, making sure that the acidity levels are such that they'll be preserved and stay preserved, and learning more about canning, and putting up vegetables and meats. A lot of people don't know that you can meats, and putting up your eggs, and people, oh, eggs only last a month. There's certain ways you can preserve eggs they'll keep for years, and I'm not talking about pickling them either. So, but learning about plants and plant medicine, um, I really would like to see, us. Um, if I were more knowledgeable about it, I would host something like that. But I feel I just don't have an adequate enough knowledge of it to try to take on something like that. So maybe if we can find somebody that's very, knowledgeable, um, be a good podcast to get started in holistic. And I'm sure there are some good ones out there. I just not searched them out, but I would like for the militia and for our group to start. We're talking about doing more educational stuff, and I'd like to broaden that out to tinctures and holistic medicine, and it's kind of hard to teach a lot of that stuff and not worry about getting sued. So you got to be really careful in the way you word things, because people will misread into everything you say, and you got to choose your words carefully, especially when it comes to medicine and healing and things like that. Cherry plum sounds awesome. I've done a lot of plum wine and cherry wine, but I've never mixed the two, but it sounds awesome. That sounds good. And you know what? It might just pouring that rum in there, and it might be fine just like that. Proof it up and make it, because I love the flavors that the wine brings. And I hate distilling it a lot of times, because I taste a wine and I taste all that good flavors, and the depth and just all the different aromas, and then you distill it, and at the other end it's just like alcohol. That's it. So I feel that a lot of times good brandies are ruined in the distillation process. It just should have been a wine, and maybe just adding vodka to wine or something, and just proofing it up and trying to maintain that good wine flavor and keep a lot of that good you know fruit flavor there. So I'm going to try to start fortifying wines and stuff and seeing how that works. Yeah, yeah. There's not a lot that use the sassafras anymore. Um, Safrole, is I guess the chemical in there that a lot of people have issues with, and sensitivities too, and it's also toxic. Um, yeah, it's been banned for a long time here, Steve. And a lot of people make a sassafras tea, and I don't do that anymore. We did back in the day though. But I think heating it up might denature the saffron. Let me see. Temperature just I'm Googling it because I don't know the temperature to denature saffron. Do you by chance, those out there that seem to know it all? Most you don't know saffron was in that. So for saffron, it would take 450 to 453 degrees Fahrenheit. So no, I'd say that it's still pretty toxic when it comes to the distillation process. So, and that's like amygdalin, the toxin that's in the cherry pits and some of the others in different concentrations. Um, yeah, it's not easily broken down. Proteins aren't easily broken down by temp either. So yeah, I'd say that probably not good to drink your sassafras teas anymore. Yeah, yeah, that's why I try to keep the cost down. There's some people that they get into the hobby that can afford to go out and chuck down a couple few thousand on a copper steel and just enjoy the hobby, and more power to them. But for the most part, I agree. Most people can't afford that. That's why I always try to go with those Bevers. They're a couple $100 or keg steel. Even cheaper, and work on that kind of budget and until you know for sure what you're going to do, and then kind of ease your way into a copper if you really get gung ho and want to go all the way. Um, yeah, you don't you don't pet your steel and love on it and whispers sweet things to it. Do you name it? You want to learn to make shine. Well, that's awesome, brother. You've come to the right place. Nick, I guess the first things first, you got to figure out exactly what kind of what do you like to drink the most? Do you like whiskey? You like bourbon? You like gin? What kind of alcohol do you usually drink when you go to the bars and order a hard liquor? I find it amazing, kind of off topic, but I post a link of this podcast, and it's like way down the page. And I'm not even seeing it on the page right now. Sometimes that happens. I'll have to check back again later. But yeah, Nick, that's what I was going to do. Man, my mind. Um, get on Facebook and join the Moonshine Militia, and also search for DIY Shine and Stuff. In both of those groups, you'll find a file section at the top and lots and lots of really good reading. And I'm getting ready to add some more to it. The DIY probably has a little bit more as far as, let's see, information. Let's see, yeah. We go to DIY. I think our file section has a little bit more. Yeah, not a whole lot really. I'm going to try to start adding some text. There's some old books and stuff. I know there's a pretty decent recipe book. Stampede still, it's in PDF form. A lot of fair recipes in there. Good starting points to build on, and that's what you really should do with any recipe that you get. That's a starting point. That's not a beginning and end. that gives you something to start at. And it's like, this was pretty good, but I'd like a little bit more proof. It only came in at 106.0. So next time I'm going to add just a little bit more sugar and get it up 107.0 or 80, because I want to get a little more production out of it without adding quite a bit of heat. Or, I didn't really get a lot of fruit carryover. Maybe I'll, instead of 5 pounds per gallon, I'll go with 6 or 7 the next time, right? Concentrate the fruit flavors a little bit more and things like that. So all these recipes should be just a good starting point. But I've got a couple of old textbooks on distilling that I'll try to add to both of the file section. We try not to, because I worry about copyright and all this stuff. But these are old books from the 70s and 80s. I'm not sure that we'd have a lot of problem posting those, but first of all, Nick, you got to figure out what do you like to drink? Yeah, that's a good way to go, brother. Got no problems though. You got to clean up. You got to clean all that paste up. So, have you ever thought about going to tri-clamps? Or I know a lot of times when you got that, it'd be pretty hard to match up exactly to a 6 or an 8-inch tri-clamp. But man, I used to paste too. Don't like to clean up, especially after it gets baked on. Yeah, he definitely got a disclaim. Corn mead sounds good. Yeah, I've got an old Bever. I drive around quite a bit too, and I've got some Budweiser keg steels I kind of drive. Yeah, I'm gonna build a copper one, but I'm gonna try to do the tri-clamp thing because it's just so convenient. It's so easy, and when you're done, you can just loosen that clamp and just swing off. Boom! It's so easy to disassemble and no cleanup and soaking all that dried up biscuit dough and chiseling it, soaking it so it'll come off easy. Yeah, it's my pasting days are pretty much over at this point. Awesome. All right, let's see. All right, Nick, you got the floor, brother. Tell us what do you like to drink? This will help maybe decide what kind of still to buy based on what you like to drink. I'm going to recommend probably off the bat either a keg still or a Bever, a football still, favorite football still. And I just saw a video. It's actually an older video Alan Bishop had made last year, and talking about a Bever. He and I talked about it for years, and a lot of people make fun of it. And I think a lot of the bad media and bad, I don't know, remarks that it gets are from people using the Bever 3-pots, and the 3-pots and the football steels aren't alike at all. The only thing that's similar is they're stainless and they have Bever on the side. Besides that, I don't think there's much in common at all. At all. The football steel is very modular. Again, I'm looking for my picture of it and I can't find it, and I know it's on there somewhere, so I'm just going to keep searching around until I find it. And I will find it. How many times can I copy that damn file in here and not see it? Jeez, oh, Pete. Well, shit, that helps if I hit all files. There we go. Maybe not. All right, let's go to, yeah, no, it won't be in here. A very, very unorganized person. How many times have I screenshotted that thing? Let me go through my screenshot page here. I know I've carried that thing forward. The hell. Man, it's so bad. Just a second here. I'm not an organized person, and I try to be. And I've got shit all over this computer. And I don't know how many times I've saved that same damn pic. How can it not be here? All right, so we're going to do it again. We're going to go to Amazon. We're really doing this. Oh, wow. I did this like every week. What the hell, man? Let me get yet another screenshot. No, I don't want to do that. Let me enlarge it. All right. It's the same damn one. Okay, screenshot. I'm going to rename it. I'm going to rename it. Oh, a PNG file. Maybe that's what I want to find it. Bever football. And we are going to move that directly into distilling. Class info. All right, so it should be there. Now let's see if I can find it and add it from wow. Interesting. Okay, let's see. Yay. That just took forever. I'll have to move some of those files so they're a little easier to find. But anyway, this is a Bever football steel. Probably one of the better values other than a keg steel out there. Very underrated. Yeah, I try to, John, and I've got thousands of distilling files, and it all goes, and I try to organize it, and it just, what happens is it gets in a subfolder of a subfolder, and that definitely doesn't jump out at you when you're trying to search. And I just have to, I guess I need to do more folders and less subfolders, because it's harder to find when you get folder in a folder in a folder, The lemon cherry Mountain Dew, I've not seen it yet, but I will. I am trying the cherry lime Sprite. That's not bad. I did try the watermelon strawberry 7-Up, and I'm not digging that so well. Yeah, I don't know. It's just not that great. The cherry lime Sprite's okay. Pretty good for a zero. Pretty good drink. I do like the Mountain Dew Baja Blast a lot. But if I see it dark, I will definitely grab it up. Now, do they have it in zero, or is it just a sweet? Because I like to do the zero. I can do the sweet, but my fiance's got diabetes, so I just try to keep all the zeros here. That way, she doesn't have to sit there and look at the real sweet drink that I'm enjoying while she's suffering through. But the zeros are pretty good. Cranberry ginger ale is good. The blackberry Dr. Pepper is good. It is sweet. Yeah, I'll give it a try. I know what you meant. You're not drinking sweaty beverages. But yeah, this I'm trying to remember what the guy's name was starting out here. Nick Little. So this is a Bever football still, and I'm hoping you're still watching us, Nick. But this is an 18.5 gallon. I think it also comes in a 13. I'm starting to get a little warm. Also comes in a 13. So very reasonably priced, a couple of $100, and it'll get you in the ballpark, and you have a pretty reliable, little still that's got everything here that you need. Some things aren't, you probably could upgrade this little pump, but it works fine. Now, I found that it's not going to pump from like way down low on the floor. If you've got this elevated, like, 5 feet, and it's up, and, it's probably not going to pump water all the way up and through this, canister. So you may have to upgrade your palm pump for that, because I did have trouble pumping up from a cooler on the floor to an elevated position. So I upgraded, and probably the best people to talk to, and as far as best pumps, I got a Vivo Sun pump, and a lot of these people that do hydroponic marijuana and cannabis grow use a lot of pumps continuously over and over, just constantly on type pumps, and they can tell you which one of these pumps that you get off Amazon work well. I know the Vivo Sun comes highly recommended from people in the cannabis industry for its reliability, so kind of can't go wrong there. I got one that's adjustable, so I can adjust the flow, and that's always nice. So you can adjust the rate of flow in your canister filter. But picking one of these up, this is like $230 right now, which is about what it's been for a long time. I know it went on sale a couple of years ago, Black Friday, for $150. Don't expect to see that again. If you do, get two. Great little starter steel. It's got a little tri-clamp here, and a sanitary ferrule, 2.5 inch, which is an odd size, so you're gonna have to get a reducer. But works great, just straight out of the box. Comes with some ceramic beads for reflux. That's fine. You can also put you some copper mesh in here. This is a rectification head, so If you don't want to pitch your 4 shots in heads, you can actually open this up during fermentate or during distillation, and you can blow off some of your 4s, through here. I wouldn't recommend doing it inside, or if you're doing it, open flame or at all. But it's an option if you're outside and you're electric or something like that. It's pretty safe. I'd say if it's a windy day and you're outside, I'd say be pretty safe. But I just make my, cuts as it comes off. And also, when you get so far in, you can open this up, and this actually a rectification head. It's pretty complex, so some of your tails will get collected here, and you can just run those off in a tube off and just drain them off as they come off. Just open this up every once in a while and drain some of that tail in there, so it'll there's a lot of reflux going on inside this head. It's a little more complex than what it looks like. What's going on, Don? Or Dan, I'm sorry. But yeah, this is a pretty good little starter seal setup. 18.5 gallons, 13 to 18.5 is for a hobbyist. It's a decent amount. It's better than like a 5. A lot of people start with the 5s because they're like $120. It's real cheap, and it's just so tempting. But for me, I just soon spend another 100 and get a 18.5, and something that I want, because most people that get the 5, they'll run it a few times and they're instantly, I need to get a bigger still. I'm just not getting enough, as this jar is not enough for all the work and time and trouble. It's just not enough liquor coming off here. And I'm spending all this time and money and work and mashing and doing all these things. And for just a little bit more time, I can be doubling down on the recipe. So, when you double down on the recipe, it's how much longer does it take 10 gallons of water to boil than 5, or 20 than 10. So that extra 30, 40 minutes, and you get 10, 20 more jars, extra at the end, pint jars. So it becomes a point where, the hobby, you do it, you get in cheap, and you get hooked, and it's like immediately you're buying a bigger steel. So if you get into the hobby and you think you're going to enjoy it, enjoy making wine, and you enjoy drinking, and you enjoy experimenting, and you enjoy doing it yourself kind of things, just go ahead and get the bigger one. If you're not sure about anything, then it might be a good idea to get a small, because it may not be something that's for you, right? But yeah, make it worth your while, because to make a 20-gallon mash versus a 5-gallon mash, yeah, it takes a little bit more corn, takes a little bit more boiling water, a little bit more sugar, a little bit more, amylase. But how much more time am I adding to get 4 times, and I can do it all at once instead of 4 days. It's taking a whole day to mash 5 gallons, but I could just done 20, and you can let it sit. You don't have to run it all at once. And I think that's another thing people get all hung up on. You can take off just as much as you want to out of this fermentation, vessel, and distill it, and keep doing that, until you're out. So if you wanted to have a 100-gallon barrel and you had a 20-gallon still, you're doing 15 at a time, you can do that, 7 times and 7 different runs, and not have to make, a different mash each time. So it's best to kind of make a little extra like that and wear less. But be a good all-around still for you to get, Nick. As far as making the mash and making the shine, that's easy. It's just a matter of cooking. So if you can basically cook, on a stove, then you're not going to have any trouble gelatinizing corn and adding amylase to it, breaking it down, and cooling it off, and adding yeast and nutrients, whatever you need to, and get it going, and mash it and ferment it and distill it. Easy hobby to learn and get into. I'm going to add some texts to the textbooks, to the DIY Shine and Stuff page and Militia page. So there'll be some more instructional things in there. It's I can't go with a real modern. I got some really good modern text, but I'm afraid we might get some issues with copyright. Some of this stuff is from the 70s and 80s, and it's just as pertinent now as it was then. There hasn't been a lot of changes other than the high temp amylase that we use. That's been kind of, I guess, one of the biggest changes. Uh, let's see, I guess the yeast, yellow label angel yeast, not new, but something kind of new to the home distilling group. So that's something that's a little bit newer that may not be in these books. But as far as just general mash making and following recipes and making brandies and stuff, it's it's as pertinent now as it was in the 80s. It's not changed a lot. So I'll try to upload a couple of those, and you'll see the file when I'll upload it in the group that it's uploaded. But let me see what the name of this book is that I'm thinking of in particular. Let's see here. Okay, we've got several. The Joy of Home Distilling is one of these books that, let me open that up real quickly and see what we got. Yeah, that's one of the ones that I think could be a pretty good one. I think this is from the, let's see, what's the date tag on it? I have the damn page. And it does give credit to the author, Rick Morris. Let's see, copyright 2014, so that's a little more modern than I would like, but that's a pretty good text. Here's one from Victoria Redden. Let's see what the date on that is. 2016. Shit. I know one of these. Rick Morris, The Joy of, what's up the, yeah, that's the same one as that. So there, I got several of the same ones, but there's another one I'll find in here. It's a little bit older, and I'll find that and upload it. So it'd be a good thing for you to read, Nick. But I mean, if you want to, we can start from the very beginning as long as you're engaging and asking questions. But I definitely appreciate you. You came to the right place, but start asking questions and answering. What do you like to make? What distillate are you wanting to make? We will help you out in any way, but we're here to answer questions. And I keep talking about it. It's hard for me to find time, and I've got some started already, but I'm going to do a beginning to end, everything you need to know. If you just follow the instructions and you follow them to the T, don't do like, a lot of people I've given these instructions to, and they say, man, I don't know what the hell happened, but that recipe you gave me, it didn't work out at all. And I'm like, really? Yeah, man, it didn't. I didn't get that much alcohol from it. And I'm like, all right, well, let's figure out where we went wrong. Did you do this? Well, now I didn't do the full 20. I tried to cut everything in half, and then then they find out that they didn't do half the steps that that you put in there, and then he's like, well, now you didn't do exactly like I said. You got to cook that for 90 minutes to 2 hours, not 45. Well, it looked thick. Well, it wasn't gelatinized yet, so that's why you didn't get all your corn gelatinized, and that's why you didn't get a good breakdown of your starches, so you didn't really get enough of your amylase to get to. So, uh, Yeah, ask that question. Ask those questions. Yeah, man. I've modified mine to it's a little micro distillery, man. It's the bomb. Yeah, send me a pic, Rich. Yeah, mine's pretty interesting. It's I show it to people, and they're like, "Wow, it's I can do a lot of things with it." Beanie oil. Good question. I don't know. I don't know if popcorn would have ever used glycerin or not. I don't. I think he was too old school for using glycerin. I think a lot of times when they were talking about beating oil, might have been talking about some of the fusel oils from the tails and using certain tails to for flavor and learning to when you look at the drip coming off the tap when you start getting into the oils uh, the distillate will bead, like it'll land on the surface and it'll bead, it'll kind of float around before it blends in, you know what I'm saying? So that might have been what he's talking about, but I'd have to hear the conversation to kind of get the gist of what he was saying. But I'd say he's knows about the glycerin. Everybody knew about it, but I doubt I doubt I doubt Poplar would have probably used glycerin, but I'm not saying he didn't or what hadn't. But he was pretty old school. But it is a common practice. A lot of people are dead set against it. They think that the glycerin that's being added, you're adding a bunch of dangerous chemicals to it. Where glycerin is just glycerol. Basically, it's a natural product, and it's in a lot of the liquors naturally, like Alfredo's bamboo. There's tons of glycerols in that bamboo. That's why it's so damn smooth. That's why the 100 proof, tastes like 70, is because those glycerols have, smoothed it out so much. And it's very, very smooth. If you haven't tried it, it's a very interesting drink. It's got a unique flavor, but just the smoothness is really what strikes you the most is how, I don't know, buttery smooth. It just no bite for the alcohol content, and it'd be really good for mixing. If you're wanting to mix drink and you want to maintain proof, but not have that alcohol taste, that would be an excellent mixer for that purpose. But that is a good question. I'll have to do some research on it and see if we'll Google. But if there's a specific interview or video where he talks about it, if you want to share that, let me know. That way I can find it. It's going to be probably pretty hard to Google. I just tried popcorn set beating oils, and I'm not getting a whole lot. Yeah, I don't. I'm not really sure what the bead oil would be, or if he was just getting a bead when he got to the tails and the fusel oils. It's hard for me to. Yeah, it is shot time. Oh. Let me see. I need to take a picture of mine. I've got it on my phone, but I don't have it in my daggone. Oh yeah, it looks nice, man. Man, you did some modifications now. Wow. That is interesting. Very interesting. So you just took the whole top off the football in. Let me see here. So you just took that whole cap off the top, put a ferrule on it. I like it. Yeah, I've not seen that before. Did you do that, Richard, or did Phil Billy do that? Yeah, I like that idea. Oh, damn it. Yeah, I like that idea a lot, brother. Oh, Wayne Ozark did it. Cool. Yeah, it's a nice little setup. I like that. That's a good idea. I've never thought about taking that little cap off the top, putting a ferrule there too. Definitely a good idea. Oh, Wayne does pretty good work, doesn't he? Yeah, they're like a little Lincoln log or Lego set, man. I love it. I'll try to find mine, and I gotta upload it from my phone. I gotta figure out. Used to I could just go straight from my phone to my PC. Now they make it difficult. I can't even do it from the charging cord anymore. They try to make everything difficult for you. They want to see what pictures you're transferring. They don't want you just to wire it from one to the next. They want you to send it over the internet so they can see too. Yeah, Wayne does real good work. Yeah, it's pretty. Have you seen it before? I've got I don't have it on the PC, I know for sure, but I've got to figure out a way. I guess I could message it. Let me see if I can send it to myself in a message. I know that's what they want you to do so they can get their calls on it. That's how they get their paws on it. Let's see here. And I took a recent picture too, a little more. There's a different setup this time though, a little different than what I had the last time. But yeah, I'll have to send it myself. When I do, Richard, I'll send you a copy of what I got. It's it's definitely different. It takes a little explaining too once you look at it. But once I explain it, once you look at it, it's pretty intimidating. But once you yeah, but once I explain it, it all makes a lot of sense, and it's not so complicated anymore. It's like this logical, this logical setup. But I am going to make some changes. When I want to change my infusion, I've got an inline infuser on there. Theoretically, it looked real good on paper, but it's just not infusing as much flavor as I would like. And I'm changing it more often than I'd like, and I'm going to try to do some multiple instead of jar rigs. I'm going to make multiple little copper vessels to infuse in that have infusers uh, and drains, and that's going to be what I do next, and have several of those in line instead of just one inline chamber. I'm gonna have several of those in line and like a jar rig, but have copper rigs instead that you can fill and dump. I think it'll work a lot better. It's gonna take some time, getting in there and cutting on some of that copper and shaping it. Probably be a good use to time to go ahead and make it. I want to make a 30 copper 30 and electric, and I want to take the leftovers maybe and do some of the copper jar, instead jar rigs, copper vessel rigs, 1 gallon copper vessel rigs, kind of like little mini thumpers, but infusers. I think that'll work pretty well, because the infusers, inline infusers like the jars, is adding more flavor than what my chamber infuser is. It's just not adding the flavor like I want. All right, y'all. We've been on here about 2 hours 15. I guess I'm gonna go ahead and call it an evening. We usually go to 10 or 11. We're about in between now, and hopefully Nick will come back next week with some questions. And Wednesday, we're here Wednesday and Saturdays, 8 p.m. Eastern. For those that are just tuning in, come back, ask your questions anytime. Bring all your inquisitiveness, and it's going to be hard for me, when somebody comes in and just says, I've never done it before, tell me everything I need to know and answer everybody's questions. That's the problem is I try to do that, and then I get 1,000 questions, and I'm not able to field the questions, and I'm sitting there talking to one person, and I'm neglecting, 20 people's questions. So I'm going to try to work together a little worksheet and break everything down, and maybe one for still selection, and what you can expect to spend and get would be a good start for most people. That's where they need to start. Unfortunately, most people say, I went and bought a still. Now I want to learn how to make moonshine. It's like, well, the first lesson would have been what kind of still to get, what's the best value, and that's the best question to ask first, instead of just jumping into buying a still and then coming in asking questions. It's usually best to ask that question first, Nick. So glad you did. Hope you get one of those football steels or a keg, and that's a really good start for beginners. But I'll work on the how-to over the weekend, and keep saying it. I'm gonna find the time and get something put together. It's gonna be something I edit and add to probably and work on and improve on over time. But it's gonna be a pretty good little starter's guide that'll get you, into making your first corn and grain mash. I'm not gonna get, off on brandies and stuff. I'll do that separately. Wines is a different discipline. It's a lot more complex than just doing grains. But we will do the grain run, and I'll make a list of everything that you need, uh, and building up a little toolbox of all the stuff that you need is good. Richard, I tell you what, brother, a lot of people, I would say probably maybe 5 to 8% of the people that watch my podcast watch it live. I guess, Saturdays they got something better to do than spend it with poor old Santa. Can you believe it? So they're out partying and swarming around and chasing girls. And so, they a lot of people, they catch my podcast, during the week while they're going to work or at work or, at home as they can. It's a more opportune time. So I'd say probably only about 5 to 8% of the people that actually watch my stream watch it live. So hopefully they'll watch it and listen to it no matter when. And when they get some questions, if it's unanswered, hopefully they'll drop in and ask some questions. If nobody comes in and asks questions, I take it that I'm answering all the questions and doing good. So maybe that's the case. I know, poor sin, nobody spends their Saturdays with me. But it's great to have y'all here, and yeah, I'll put together a little beginning and end. It's just going to be a simple cracked corn recipe. I'm not going to get too crazy with too many grains. I'll probably talk about malts and using malted barley, of course, it may be malted wheat. I'm not going to get too into doing major multi-grains, and all that stuff, but we will do a basic, you know, sugar-free, sugarless, converted mash, which is the best, and get people started doing it that way. I may also include a cornmeal and sugar recipe for people that don't want to cook, don't want to gelatinize, and don't care about having cornmeal flavored sugar. That's basically what it is, and I drank that for many years. It's hard, it's good, it is what it is. But everybody have a great weekend. What's left of it? Yeah, we all learning. Every night I try to learn something. Y'all teach me as I teach. And yeah. So everybody, thanks for tuning in. Have a great weekend. We will see you Wednesday. I'm not sure if I'll be on this coming Saturday. My old high school has a sports 100-year sports reunion thing, and I'm gonna have to go back to that, kind of make my appearance. I was an all conference football player so I'll have to. I think I'm the only person that made the all conference team that isn't in the Hall of Fame. So we're gonna have that conversation, right? So yeah, I gotta go back and see all my old buddies. I haven't seen a lot of them in many years, so it'll be a lot of fun. It'll be enjoyable, and don't have a lot of years left in me, so I guess I better get out and visit some of my old buddies. I've lost quite a few in the last few years, and I want to visit with some more of them before I lose them and they lose me. Kind of sad reality of life, but so it is. But yeah, I'll probably be there this coming Saturday, so that'll give me a little extra time too to put stuff together. But until then, I'll see y'all Wednesday night. Till then, everybody have a great weekend and a great early week, and we'll see you Wednesday at 8 Eastern. Love y'all. Peace out. Shine on.